The story of the Indian diplomat Devyani Khobragade, who was strip searched allegedly for paying less than minimum wage to her domestic help Sangeeta Richard, has been in the headlines for almost a week now. And there has been an almost hysterical response of the Indian government, which has blown this into a huge diplomatic row. All kinds of related issues have emerged vis-a-vis the diplomat. But we're yet to hear the Indian government say a single word about the domestic help Sangeeta, while she's being vilified and criminalized in the social media. In fact, anyone who speaks against Devyani, the diplomat, has been given the same treatment and trolled, including US Attorney Preet Bharara, who's put out his understanding of the case, both in legal and human terms. A man of Indian origin who was once celebrated for bringing Wall Street to its knees has today been accused of being more white than white. Also, as the US takes the high moral ground on defending Sangeeta Richard, we ask, how well do they protect the rights of their domestic workers in their country? So that's what we discuss on the social network today. Preet Bharara, more Indian than Indians. That's you can hashtag Devyani and Sangeeta and write into our Twitter handle with your comments and, of course, your questions to the panelists. Let's quickly introduce our panelists for the day. We're joined in the studio by Ananya Bhattacharjee, who is a labor union leader with NTUI. We're also joined from Washington by Tiffany Williams, who's the campaign coordinator for National Domestic Workers Alliance. All right, before we listen in actually and we bring on what the Foreign Affairs Minister has in fact said on that issue today, let me quickly start with Ananya. Ananya, I want to start with you first and ask you, we're looking at a very curious situation over here where we've got basically the United States government, which seems to be speaking up more for the rights of an Indian than the Indian government speaking up for the rights of their own Indian. What's that all about?
Yes, I think that the way you just put it, is Bharara more Indian than Indian? I think that's a very curious phrase, because it really shows what I think I said on another show before, is the misplaced patriotism of the Indian government, where it is stuck on talking about Devyani Khobragade with no reference, yet they have not shown an iota of compassion for the domestic worker. In fact, I was watching Salman Khurshid's show just now, and he alleged that there is a conspiracy. He alleged that there's a conspiracy by poor women and their families to extract something from the Khobragade family. That is laughable. That is laughable given the power of the Khobragade family in politics and the power that Ms. Devyani had. So really, I think the Indian government has made no effort to really find out about the domestic workers' version.
Yeah.
And they have been alleging all kinds of things,
yeah,
without at all even asking, can we get her side of the story?
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting. I mean, one of the reasons why this has become such a huge story online today is because, like we mentioned, that US Attorney Preet Bharara, who's in fact put out his version of what he thinks is that story. And, frankly, whether you agree with it or not, that is his version. Let's quickly bring up our plasma to show you a sense of the kind of outrage that he's in fact been subjected to on social media. These are just a sort of the kind of troll tweets that we've seen on him. For example, the Bad Doctor has written in saying, breaking news, Preet Bharara uses Fair and Lovely every day. However, sources confirm that his skin is still brown. In fact, there are very few voices which have actually come out in support of him. Ranjan Mukherjee seems to be one of them, and he says that Preet Bharara has a valid point. The real victim is the underpaid and mistreated maid, not the lawbreaker, Devyani Khobragade. And in fact, there are several other tweets, and many of them probably not really for airing on national television. In fact, when we put out our topic, we got many choicey abuses in response to what we put out. But before we bring in Tiffany Williams, let's quickly actually bring in what the Foreign Affairs Minister has spoken on the subject.
May I make a comment about...
कल जॉन केरी साहब ने मेनन साहब से बात की है और ऐसा सुन रहे हैं कि आप उनसे बात करेंगे। आपको लगता है कि क्या ये अमेरिकी कॉन्स्पिरेसी की तरह देख रहे हैं?
नहीं, आप बता दें, भारतीय कंस्पिरेसी हो नहीं सकती। भारतीय कंस्पिरेसी हो नहीं सकती, तो और फिर क्या हो सकती है? और कंस्पिरेसी का मतलब ये नहीं कि राष्ट्रपति से नीचे सभी लोग उसमें इन्वॉल्व हैं। कहीं ना कहीं किसी तो पुलिस के सर के भी हो सकती है, कहीं ना कहीं किसी
the Foreign Affairs Minister speaking about that particular issue. But I just want to quickly welcome Marvin Matthew also, who's based out of New York, and he is an active member of the Youth Center. Marvin, I want to quickly bring you in on some of the comments that we were showing on social media, which have been trolled and hugely directed at Preet Bharara, who's only come out with what he thinks is his version of that story. What is the purpose of this trolling? Does it serve any purpose aside from all of us displaying our own sense of elitism on that issue?
No, it doesn't. Trolling is an issue, and it's an issue in the political game as well. It starts from the political side, from the media side, and we have to fix it on a large scale. And it's been taking over our social media. If we allow this and allow it to continue developing, it's going to filter into our political rhetoric, and it already has. I mean, look at the elections, right? Not just in India, but in everywhere in the world. It's a problem, and it doesn't help anything. We're talking about these things, but we don't have any of the evidence. None of the actual facts of the case has come out. The case itself hasn't been processed yet. So everybody's just kind of venting what their feelings are, but there really is no point to any of it. And now we're really throwing mud at people and really causing a lot of slander. We need to start taking responsibility for our words, and this trolling is not doing it.
But Marvin, what's really interesting is that, you know, all of the trolling seems to be happening only on one side. It's almost all of it's unanimously sort of directed at anybody who's speaking up for the maid. It's almost as if there's a, you know, anti-national sentiment emerging from some of these troll tweets. I mean, more white than white. He's using fair and lovely. I mean, he's allowed to say what he wants.
That's a dangerous comment. I mean, I think you should have respect for it. And I would actually disagree. I don't think it's just for the maid. I think it's come from all ends. I mean, just yesterday in the Times of India, there was a picture of the U.S. police, the border police for diplomats, and they were essentially trying to show how restrictive the United States was on it. Now, I think the trolling's come from all angles, and it hasn't just come from social media. It's also come from media and politicians. I mean, look at Rahul Gandhi and India's response to this. There was a part of the Times of India said that they want to lock up homosexuals, people that are gay working in the United States Embassy, because now, of course, being gay is illegal in India.
Yeah.
So it's not just kids on social media, it's everybody.
No, but I was talking more specifically about this particular case. But Ananya, you wanted to make a point.
Yes, I wanted to make a point about the vilification of Mr. Bharara, somebody who was a hero at one point, as you were saying. It looks like the Indian government really likes rich NRIs who can come and invest millions of dollars in India for business. You know, the whole celebration of NRIs is about that. And it gives it's trying to give UN protection to an employer who exploited a domestic worker. So I find a lot of hypocrisy in the way the Indian government feels free to really celebrate NRIs and then, you know, vilifies Preet Bharara. In fact, Salman Khurshid said earlier, who is he? Well, who is he? He is the investigator of this very important case. The government should know who he is.
Marvin, you want to make a quick point of this? I'm going to toss across.
I mean, I'd agree with you that we should stop vilifying. The only point I'd draw back is that it's not so binary. It's not just zeros and ones. I don't think the Indian government just loves NRIs that fund, and I don't think they're willing to hurt the same people either. I just think that they don't have the information right, and what you hear is just from people. They might be politicians, they might be important figures, but they're just people, and we're really seeing their humanity now.
Well, the Indian government has made very little effort to get some information about the domestic worker. And they have assumed a lot about the domestic worker, claiming conspiracy, for God's sake.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
So that's essentially the premise which we began with, that the Indian government has made very little effort to try and understand what the other side is, given that the other side is as Indian as the first side.